Welcome back to Out on a Limb podcast with part 2 of our conversation with David Manning. So without further ado, let's get right on into it.
I feel like when you're looking up to the side, sometimes I feel like you are, and I'm sure this isn't it, but I feel like you're seeing all kinds of things and you're kind of dumbing it down for us. Like you're like,
no, I mean, it's not, it's, I'm probably pulling or drawing on energies because I'm thinking, oh God, I can't think of the words here. And so the words come in, but I'm not seeing lots of, there's not a host of angels gathered around you. Or there might be actually, but I'm not aware of them.
Yeah. Just off screen, there's a whole, nest of angels.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, do you know who are the guides that work with you primarily? Oh, yeah. Because you work with all sorts of energies, but what about on a daily basis personally?
On a daily basis, personally, it is primarily what I would term my higher self, my greater self. And that's a constant, that's like a constant presence. And that is a constant presence for all of us. But we do tend to have quite a few layers between us and it. And of course, that's it's all us in that sense. So that's the closest thing, and it's just like the tiniest shift of attention, a tenth of a degree from this everyday waking consciousness to that, and it's like, oh yeah. And so that used to be something that I made much more difficult, but I think it's always that easy because it is what we are. But we have made we've made such a meal of separation over many thousands of years. We've made a lot of that, and it isn't, it is as close to us as our breath in that sense. But 10 years ago, 13 years ago now, in 2010, the lion-headed beings that we know from Egypt, then Sekhmet, the goddess Sekhmet, is the primary one that we know of. They came in, and it started off as regular lions being present in meditation, and then over some time they evolved into the lion-headed beings, and they would take me out of body on journeys to other planets, actually, and to temples on other planets, and they said to me, they introduced themselves as architects and geneticists and designers. And they said that that one of their roles is to gather DNA from all over the universe so that when a planet is ready to begin the experiment of hosting life, they are some of the primary movers of that. They bring a lot of DNA in to begin that process. And they said to me, you're one of us, you're the one on the ground, and there's a team of us that will work with you and through you. And I know that they have trained me and to hold large fields of energy, and they participate in that so that when we're working on a teleconference, they do that, they hold that. But they also remind me, and they often come into one-to-one sessions, and when they come in, there's a big genetic activation happening. So somebody is getting a big surge of energy through their DNA that helps them to become aware of their cosmic origins. And I think that's, a lot of that is happening on the planet. We are needing that at the moment to break out of the mindset that, because, just as we have closed our individual fields, then the planetary field has also been locked into a very insular way of viewing things. And that isn't how it was thousands of years ago. My vague memories are that this was a very free-flowing interplanetary way station, in a sense, with lots of movement back and forth between other star systems and dimensions, and there was a very free exchange. And now we're in this very limited perspective and limited view, and I think that still goes on in some in many ways, but it isn't yet, and it's sort of bubbling under conscious. It's about to. It always seems to be about to make the big breakthrough. And I think most people are very aware that there are. I mean, it seems a silly thing to say, doesn't it? Even that we are not the only sentient beings in this universe. Most people are aware of that, but it hasn't fully been acknowledged as a planet, in a sense. And that when it is, and I think it's not that far away, that will involve a really lovely dismantling of a shield that is, an energetic shield around the planet that keeps us in a limited view of the universe and our place in the universe.
That is so fantastic that you just brought this up at this time in history, because that's exactly what I'm getting and what the book is about, the origin story. And hopefully it'll be available for purchase next week. But the point is that didn't come from me either. That was a transmission from the 12 starseed source clusters that founded our universe.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that they talk about, is the architecture of not just our planet, but the whole universe, and how that came into being, and how the 12 all had different roles and pieces to play. And it needs to come out now.
Yeah.
You're getting it. I'm getting it. A lot of people are being downloaded with this information now. And the thing that they told me originally, right from the get-go, is just let these transmissions flow. Do not put a timeline on them. It's all orchestrated. So don't get upset if, you have a hiccup or there's a hitch or it takes a little longer, because it needs to come out when it's ready to come out. And so I think this book is going to come out right on the leading edge of whatever is about to be disclosed in the next year or two.
Beautiful. Sounds. And what have you called the book?
It's called The Origin Story. Rediscovering our galactic ancestors. So exactly talked about our ancestry. We humans have been hidden from us for so long.
And there was a lot of tampering, with our genetics along the way, and I was that story. I mean, before I'd even heard about the Anunnaki or anything like that, I was experiencing that story coming alive in my cell structure. It was the weirdest 2 or 3 weeks where these energies would be erupting and emerging, and I would be looking, and it's like, oh, that's, and I could just see these patterns that were about genetic manipulation and locking down a species into a slavery, system, a slavery mentality, and then as it had settled in my system, I met somebody who reflected that story back to me in a way that it was like, oh, that's the story that's been playing out in my body, and she had written about it too, and so things have often happened that way, that they land here or they'll upwell here in me, and then very quickly there'll be an external confirmation, in a sense, which is a good way to go about it for me, because that helps that process of trust too. And what I've just been made aware of is what I need to move into now, is a state of complete self-acceptance. And it's like, oh, I'm not there yet. So I just have to work on total self-acceptance. And I don't know what that looks like yet, because I haven't paid any attention to that. This was something that landed just 2 days ago. And I thought, oh, I will get there over the next few days, but I haven't even paid attention to what is it I'm not accepting yet. And I think actually, even as I'm saying that, it's more because I've done so much, really quite dense, dark shadow work. I'm okay with walking through my shadowy aspects. I've seen a lot of really unpleasant stuff in other times too, and we have all played all ends of the spectrum. In a sense, we have to play all ends of the spectrum in order to learn the ropes, in a sense, and to recognize actually that it's a game that we're playing here. But what I think we really have to move into accepting, and this is, I'm very aware that when something starts to emerge for me, because my system is mapped very much to the collective, so that it's like it starts to emerge here, and it's because this is what the collective is moving into. So I think there are a lot of people on the planet that act as like signaling points for the collective, in a sense, you know, and I'm one of those. And so I think this deep self-acceptance, not of our darkness, but of our power, you know, as Marianne Williamson said it very, very eloquently, then it's that we have to allow and accept now is the power that we are, the unlimited universal power that is available to us. And that's the next step, you know.
Well, and like you said earlier, it's, you know, we're not, and Marianne Williams says this as well, we're not so much afraid of what will happen. We're afraid of the success of it, right? We're not afraid of failing as much as we're afraid of what success looks like. And do we deserve that? Are we worthy of that? And, you know, you described that with
persecuted
when
by
you were
that.
dragging your feet for so many years about not wanting to get into this work. And though you knew you were being called and you wanted to on one level, but you didn't, right? Self-sabotage. So, but because you work so much with the energies of the collective, and Will has experienced this before too, where you sense into the collective, how do you personally distinguish between what is yours and what is the collective's when there is something going on in your field, so that people can, you know, if it is the collective, you can let go of that and go, oh, this is not mine. This is either theirs or this is the collective. How do you do that for listeners who struggle with that?
And I think that a lot of us are feeling that, you know, the collective is, I mean, we're a very easily manipulated species, in a sense, a very easily trained species. And that the efforts being put into that are massive at the moment. And this was one of the lovely things that I saw the other day, was this heart field. Now I remember what I was talking about on Sunday's teleconference. Was the expanding heart field that is deeply connected to the planetary heart field. It's not so much a personal heart field that's opening out, it's the universal heart field that is expressing itself through each of us. And it's becoming, it's like, so we're all connecting, those of us that are open to this, and many that aren't even aware of it particularly, are having a lot of energy move through their heart fields at the moment, moving personal wounding out of the way, but deepening into the universal heart field. This is connecting right the way around the planet and building a planetary heart field. Now, this is becoming independently intelligent. I was sitting in the garden meditating on this, and I saw this field of energy just leave my heart, and I was like watching it go. And I asked, where is this going? And I was told literally it's going off to work. And it was like, and as that phrase landed, I understood that we are in a place now where this planetary heart field this planetary heart intelligence is becoming active. And so at some level, I have offered my heart field for, or made it available. And I think, you know, I'm not just saying, oh, aren't I wonderful? Many of us have done, millions of us have signed up, and the signing up happens deep in the unconscious somewhere, where we have said, yeah, move energy through my heart for the collective. And I'll never know where that blob of energy was heading off to, but it would have gone somewhere on the planet where it was needed. And I think that's happening all over the planet now. And what was whispered into my ear, and I was in a place of doubt with this, was that this planetary heart field, if we become conscious enough about it, we can use this to hold the field of artificial intelligence and give it a structure into which it sits and is guided by. And that gave me a lot of hope, I thought, because from what we're hearing now, and there's a lot of information all of a sudden coming out about artificial intelligence, it could be disastrous. So it needs this bigger field of heart intelligence to hold it and to guide it. That wasn't the question you asked at all.
Great. That's important, but that also means that more of us are going to be feeling this stuff of the
Activated,
collective.
activated and sensing in those into those
Right.
moments
And
of saying, a piece of my heart field has gone off to do some work. And that's a great way to look at it, because a lot of us, when we feel that presence of energy that may overwhelm us at that point, it's not, we're associating it as we're taking on something, or it's maybe our physicality or our physical space, our physical energies, imparting some sort of consequence, I guess you could say. But in reality, and I like the way you said it, we're actually allowing a piece of us to go out and be part of the greater collective and do the work that it needs to do, whether we are realizing that or not at the moment. But now, if we can put our construct around that, our understanding around that, that makes it a lot better. Because, for me, I have sensed those moments throughout the collective consciousness of the planet, when there are, uprisings of despair or whatever. I feel it, and I get on, and it took me a while to understand. Wait, this isn't me. So now I have to just let it process through me, because that's what my role is. I've got to allow that to transmute through me. And it took a while to get there, but now I understand it when that happens. I still question it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Is this me? Is it not me? What's going on? But I like the way you put it, as far as, letting that heart field go out and do its work the way it's supposed to be doing it. So
yeah, I think, and the lovely thing is, it's not even our energy. It's this universal heart that just moves, and it feels amazing when that energy is surging through you, because it's it's the universe expressing itself, and our heart field is in a huge process of expansion at the moment, and I think this becomes, it's always been the place where I have, every time I would go into meditation and ask, what should I focus on today? It's always drop into your heart, drop into your heart, drop into your heart. And always I forget and go ask the question. And then it's like, drop into your heart. Always start there, always go there first. And then, something else will happen. But that has always been the point of grounding, in a sense, the framework. Open this field and then lots of other stuff can happen. But until I would open this field out, not much else is moving, But to go back to your question, then, how do I differentiate between me and the collective? And in a way, it's like, we can't, because we are the collective, so we can't separate ourselves out. And it is about awareness, I think, because as soon as I become aware of, oh, this anxiety isn't actually mine, I'm not actually feeling anxious myself, but I've just walked into a field of anxiety as soon as I opened the front door. This is planetary anxiety. And, there's a lot of that being stimulated at the moment by our news stories and whatever else. I think as soon as I become aware, then that really helps, because it sort of falls apart in my field. Then as soon as I know that, oh, I haven't generated this, I'm not frightened of, the day ahead. I've just walked into a field of energy. And then I have the choice. Do I take this on and move it through me? And I think a lot of us, that's what we used to do. We were trained to work for the collective by moving collective energy through, by processing it through our system. And I don't think that's a useful thing anymore. It's like to recognize, oh, this isn't my energy, and we can instruct our field to let it go. And because the field, this was shown to me a few years ago, and it's a lovely thing. It's like we're sitting at the controls of an extraordinary spaceship, and we're just learning. We've been given the operating manual, and we're just learning what this button here does, what this does. But our field is this extraordinary multidimensional ship of light that is eternal, and carries us through our lifetimes on this extraordinary journey where we've all embarked upon. And within our field, each of us as individuals, everything is encoded there that we will ever need. and we're just learning now. It's like we've been given the operating manual and we're just learning how to use it. And so as we become more confident in giving our field instructions, it will show us what we currently term as miracles, but which are actually a natural part of our process. It'll show us what it's capable of. So letting go of collective energy is an instruction. And then you can program your field, in effect, to not pick up anything that isn't yours in the first place. And that takes a little bit of, because we've been so brainwashed into the other, it just takes a bit of repetition. But the field then knows, and so it doesn't do that in the way that it used to. Before it was like walking in a swamp, being part of the swamp, and now it's like floating across the surface of the swamp, and you can dip your hand in and have a feel of it if you want, but you don't have to dive out of the boat and half drown in order to familiarize yourself with it, if that makes sense. That's my experience anyway, that it's our field and the field capacity is just starting to come online, and we are going to be amazed at the capabilities of this this multidimensional piece of kit that we've all been issued with.
Oh, I was just saying that that concept that you're talking about, I've been aware of that concept. I've taught it to all my clients, the fact that recognize whether it's yours or not, release it. And the way you just expressed it, like I never looked at it like it's part of a larger collective, that it's, I just thought, it's the energy around you, you're picking up something, but you're saying it's a lot bigger than that. Like it is the collective, like what the media is programming and things that are going on in certain parts of the world, that it is somehow you're stepping into this, what is it, like a cloud of this energy? Like it's like
a soup, isn't it? Sometimes it's like a thick, messy soup, isn't it? And that's why it's important for us it's becoming more and more important. And it's always been, all traditions have always focused on this, that it's really important to be aware of where you place your attention, because that you just draw energy into yourself as you give it attention. And it's not about denying what's happening on the planet, but it's about being very selective about how much of your time and energy and attention you give, and to recognize also that joy is a field of energy too, that it's important for us to generate, and to hold and offer and to expand on this planet. Because, we get to choose the level of frequency we modulate ourselves at, but we also get to choose what frequencies we're downloading. And now I think it's also really important that, and a useful thing to do as a meditation, a lovely thing to do as a meditation, is simply to offer yourself as a channel of light for the planet. And to take 5 minutes a day doing that is like a supercharge for you at a personal level, but you're also really being of amazing service to the whole planetary collective then, not just the human collective, but the planetary collective, because these energies and you have to focus outside of the planetary field, yeah? So maybe go to the sun, or to the cosmos, but intend to be outside of the planetary field, and you focus out there, and you're bringing that energy in, and you're taking it underneath, or into the energies of the new earth, so that's what you're amplifying and bringing more into the collective consciousness, I think is and I think that's an important thing to do now, and a very, very supportive thing to do for yourself as well as the collective.
So shifting gears, I have an interesting question. I imagine you've been to the States.
I think I'm going to go there again, fairly soon, within the next year or so. But I haven't been there for a long time. But I did, years and years ago, I spent a year in New York in 1986, 87. And then in 1997, I spent 7 months traveling across North America. So I flew into Denver and bought a station wagon and drove thousands and thousands of miles through Wyoming or Montana and up into British Columbia and just had the best time. It was amazing. But I love the landscape of North America. It's epic. We don't have landscape like that here in the UK. We have a beautiful landscape, but it's not just the sheer majesty that is present in the States, and that's quite breathtaking.
So I wonder, the UK, because it's so old, comparatively speaking to the US, we're quite new. There is a lot of history, and there's a lot of history with psychical studies and mediumship and metaphysical things that we don't necessarily have a history of in the United States. So from that kind of a perspective, I imagine there's some pros and cons about being in that older energy of the UK. I mean, you're a little more supported. Maybe people don't look at you like you're weird if you go out and say you're a medium, like they do in the States often. But is that also a hindrance because of the old school way of doing things, for example, or the older energies of whatever, the Inquisitions and things like that? What do you think about the differences there?
What I noticed when I was in the States was that it's like, here, it's a couple of thousand years since truth was lived and walked in this country. And by truth, I mean, native tribes that were deeply in touch with nature and understood truth. And I think it's a long time. And the Romans came along, they invaded this country. When did they come? I think was it just before or just after the birth of Christ? So it's about 2,000 years ago anyway. And they killed off the last of the Druids, who held a field of wisdom in Europe. There have been a lot of layers of suppression over that time, and you can really feel that. But when you grow up in a place, that's just what you grow up in, and you don't know it. So going to the States, that energy was very, very close to the surface. And I was spending a lot of time in wilderness places, up in mountains and by lakes, and so you could feel the Native American history, and that the planet or the landscape had been honored and worked with. That was just beneath the surface in a lot of places, not across the whole of the country, but it was much more present, and that was beautiful. So, but this landscape also has some real ancient mystery and magic that is very powerful. And that is coming more and more to the surface again. And I think a lot more people are working with it again. So really, and that's all it takes. I think, those energies drop deeper if they're not actively worked with. We've also been through a time of thousands of years where those energies were actively withdrawn by the earth, where we were on a deep exploration of density and darkness. And now that time is coming to an end. So those energies are coming back to the surface again. So, and that's happening right the way around the planet. There's just perhaps a bit more of a clear up job to do here. Something that was interesting, another time I was in the States back in 2004, and I'd spent weeks in Sedona in Arizona. And a lot of that time I was just lying on rocks, hot rocks, in the sun by a very cold river. And I would spend hours a day in that place. And I knew that I was literally drawing up memory from deep in the land into my body. And so my connection with the earth had gone very deep in that time where I spent weeks just lying in these rocks. And I flew back to London, and I was confused and I couldn't work out what was going on. And I still had this very deep anchoring into the earth. But what I could feel and what I could see was the class structure laid out in this country. And it was an actual structure. an energetic structure that people anchored into, they grounded into their track line, if you like, their class. And this is your place, and you don't move out of that place. You stay on that track line, and that's how you live your life. And it was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe how extraordinary that was, that we at some level have decided that that's what we would create, a rigid field of energy that would hold people in place. And that's probably across Europe. And you didn't have that in the States. Now you have your own class structure, and it's based around money. Very much money is king there. Here it's position and history, and now money much more. But I was astounded that collectively, over hundreds, thousands of years, we've created this structure. And usually people would anchor into that and then never allow their earth connection to go any deeper, to take them out of that into some deeper wisdom. They would stay within the track line of what was regulated for them. And now, of course, that is breaking up much more, but it's a strong structure. So, yeah, those are just some insights I had into energies in the landscape and how they impact us, really.
Brought that up though, because I've worked with someone, acquaintance of mine, over in, I don't know, she's north of England or in London. I can't remember exactly where. And she wants to embrace, this whole thing of feeling good and, light. And she works for the NHS and the National Health System, and just is so depressed because they don't allow for any new ideas, new ways of working with people and so forth. And so she feels so confined, but she's been given this vision of a whole other way that you can live your life and feel joyous and all this stuff. But she is locked into, like, I did a channeling session for her, and it is this whole thing of shut up, let's go to the pub. It's like just this, and the only way that I could sense that she was going to break free of that was, her husband was going to break free of it. It was like she was going to have to make that decision and kind of be a loner, live on the, on the outskirts of that until everybody else catches up. So it's good to hear that is changing, because that was like, you can't help someone that's dealing with that much of a force. Or do you?
But, the awakening process, it doesn't matter where you are, we all have to face that, don't we? We all have to make the choices that will take us on our awakening journey, because everybody, or perhaps not everybody, but many, many people get the awakening impulse. And I think many people weigh up the risks of, if I do this, my whole life is going to fall apart. And then many people just push that back down again and think, no, I'm not going to take that risk. I'm in a comfortable job, comfortable relationship, married, kids, house, car, dog. I'm not, because a lot of that would fall apart if you take the risk. Or maybe it wouldn't, who knows? Because this intelligence that arises always has our best interests at heart. But miracles happen when you give space to it. What we call miracles, it's just magic and energy working, isn't it? But maybe, a lot of us feel the impulse and then weigh up the risk to our current life situation and think, no, I'm not doing that. So it doesn't matter what country you're in, that those issues are the same for the awakening process the world over, I think. And maybe it is when you're working in a big organization like the NHS. Well, you've chosen to spend a lot of your time in a very structured field. Now that has ramifications for how you live your life. I love the NHS. It has saved my life on many, many occasions. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful system. I really do. It's being decimated by our current government, and I think we will all suffer horribly because of that. But it's a vast, dense system that serves well if you're in medical crisis, but if you're not, then use other approaches. And she might have to you've got to take risks and step out of our comfort zone. All of us have had to do that to follow our heart, to follow our truth. And
Well, if she's getting that impulse, then wouldn't, if you're being guided, if you're following that, then wouldn't you eventually land on your feet? I mean,
Of course.
yeah, totally. I think you don't know that, do you? You don't know that. And, it's terrifying when those impulses start to arise.
Yeah.
I love that it's a risk benefit analysis that we all
Yeah.
have to
Yeah, and I mean, it comes down to, when we realize that really the universe is working for us, not against us.
Yeah.
When we can surrender to that, then we see the majesty and the beauty in it. And I mean, I went through that myself. I mean, when I first started channeling, they said, you're going to be stepping away from the current business that you're in, and you're going to step away and do this work full time. And I was like, no, I'm not. Thank you very much. I like what I'm doing, and I like the paycheck and everything else.
Yeah.
And they said, you're going to see a sign, and I kept avoiding the signs. I mean, even though they weren't there, but but finally the biggest sign came, and I was like, oh. And I literally sat in a meeting one day, and it was as plain as day, and I knew it. I was like, I sat in my chair and I just sat back. I'm like, there's my sign. I gotta go. This is it. And when I
you've
did,
been supported ever
and
since.
I haven't looked back, and I've trusted that the universe is going to provide ever since, and they have, and it has, and I've stopped fighting the universe. And I think when we can look at our existence as one that either we're going to fight the universe tooth and nail, or we're going to join in partnership with the universe, harmony with the universe. everything is laid out, because in reality, we've created exactly what we're wanting, and we have to accept that. If we fight what we've created, then it's all going to go awry. So yeah, but it's difficult. I mean, we're humans, and we do stupid human things. So yeah.
And we like our safety. We don't particularly like change, and we like our safety for the most part, don't we? And what you're speaking of there is my experience. I resisted, fought the universe tooth and nail, held on to my addictions for as long as I possibly could, and almost died. And the universe had to pull them out of my tightly clenched hands, basically. And then I was led every step of the way, but I didn't give up without a fight, So, but yeah.
Quick question before we let you go, because I do want to honor your time, and I thank you for being with us. But you said you went to the College of Psychical Studies. Now, that's not the same thing as Arthur Findlay, is it?
Yeah, Findlay College is a I think a mediumship training college. The College of Psychic Studies was set up by Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the author of Sherlock Holmes. He was one of the founding members. So it's a lovely institute in South Kensington in London, and I was guided there. I mean, I think literally this was early on, and I think literally a guide stepped into my field and walked me there, pushed me through the door, and then left, because I have this experience of hearing the door click shut behind me and sort of coming to in the hallway, because I wouldn't have found the place. And I had the first experience of, in this lifetime, it was my first experience of feeling totally at home on this planet. And I was embraced by the energy of that place. And literally, it did open up and welcome me with open arms. And I was, I was very, very fortunate to have found that place. It's still running now, and I no longer work there or offer any events there. But it's a great place to go to get a start, and they do healing and mediumship training and psychic development and animal communication, all sorts of lovely things, dowsing, and it's a great place to investigate. And now, of course, they're online, so that you can check that out. The College of Psychic Studies in South London.
And what I've, and correct me if I'm misspeaking, but what I understand in the UK, psychics, mediums, channelers, I don't want to say they're sanctioned, but I mean, they have more of a precedent than they do here in the United States. It's almost as if they have a,
if they're legit.
like a union card, right?
No, there isn't something like that. There's a lot of talk now that all of those sorts of things should be regulated, and I don't know how you would go about doing that, but maybe there's just more of a history of it here, and this country isn't Catholic, so I think that this sort of thing is frowned upon more in Catholic countries. And it's weird because my impression, and perhaps only from sort of California, we would think of the States as being, the home of this, but perhaps California is, much more that, and we get a lot of media and books and stuff from that have come out of that place. So we have the impression over here that it's much bigger, but the States is a very, very large country. Huh? So yeah, I mean, I think because a lot of people, when they ask me what I do and I mention it, usually the conversation will just die within a second, and and it's like, because I don't need to have people's approval or sanctioning of what I do, so it's fine. I don't mind, and sometimes people are interested and want to talk more about it, but so I don't know that it's becoming more popular, more. I think it's always been available. It's becoming more mainstream then.
It's so interesting. I didn't think that it wasn't mainstream there, because I'm a school counselor, worked in high school for a long time. I do that by day. And I can assure you that my students wouldn't come to me and sit down, and when I asked them where they're going to go to school, they would say, oh, to Arthur Findlay or to the College of Psychic Studies. It would be a little bit frowned upon. So
yeah,
I'm waiting for.
I mean, it would be here too. That was it's a college or a place where you would go of an evening or for weekend workshops, and it's a very small place. But it's a lovely place. It's a bit of a gem, I think.
It's going to change.
We need to start one, I guess.
Yeah.
Near Atlanta.
Yeah, there is one in Georgia.
Delphi.
But I just haven't.
Delphi.
But I just haven't been able to get it. There's
and like places like the Institute of Noetic Studies and those sorts of places. You have a lot of those, don't you? The Omega Institute.
That's true. Yeah.
In Virginia Beach, I guess. We do have a few.
Yeah. Okay.
And my good friend Deborah Mills, who lives in Asheville, is currently building the most amazing building for the School of Wholeness and Enlightenment, which I think will be opening next year. And that will be in Asheville or Ashland? Asheville.
Well, there's Ashland, Oregon.
Yeah.
But
So is it?
So it's Asheville in Carolina. So yeah, check that out. The School of Wholeness and Enlightenment, because that's going to be. There's a lot of money has gone into building this gorgeous building. So that will be. I think she's hoping that opens in about a year's time.
Beautiful.
I'm going to write that down. Did you want something else?
No, I was just thinking, for us here, like when people have it tagged onto their bio that they've been at the Arthur Findlay school, then it's like, oh, they're legit. It's like, where
They've
it's kind of hard to know, like you said, how do you quantify someone's ability when we all have such varied, I think it's just, you help people. People are smiling.
I think the good thing about that was, because I spent years sitting in psychic development classes and healing courses, and the president of the college had taken a bit of a shine to me, and he basically said, whatever you want to do. And so I would be the college representative on many, many weekend workshops. I would be the key holder, and I would tell people where the fire escape was and do the teas and coffees in the break. So I got to sit on weekend workshops with probably over the years hundreds of people from all over the world in, running weekend training courses on endless modalities. And so I was exposed to an awful lot, and it was a wonderful process for me, just to be exposed to all of these different approaches and belief systems. It was utterly extraordinary and a huge gift. And what happened for me, and I was with a teacher, a marvelous woman called Julie Soskin, for a number of years. And then eventually the teacher would say to the student, okay, you're ready now. And then you would go through an initiation period of giving readings to staff members and, members of the public for free or at a very low cost. And you would, they would get feedback on how you were doing, and then you would be allowed to work, to go on to their books, as it were. And so that's a very good way to, to build a reputation for the school as well as for yourself, but also because it's so important to trust, because it's difficult to trust this process and this intuition as it opens up. And so sitting for years in psychic development was a marvelous thing for me, with a teacher that I really came to trust, although she terrified me initially. And then knowing that getting the opportunity to do lots and lots of readings for people that were willing to give you a chance, to give you an opportunity. They weren't expecting you to be the most amazing psychic. They were, they knew you were a probationer, and that was a beautiful experience. It was a very lovely way to move into this world and to really come to trust my own intuition, because that's key. But also to have that intuition checked and clarified by people that were much more experienced than I, and who could say, no, you're wrong there, or you're off there. That's not, you were misreading that. And that was just really helpful over and over again. And I think that's a rare thing in this world, to have that sort of opportunity. And so it was really valuable. And so now, that was a long time ago. I was there from the end of the 80s, 1989, I think I walked through those doors. And I don't know where I'd be without that long period of training that really helped me to deepen into my process and to really learn to trust. So now I don't even question it as I'm working with somebody. I question it sometimes when I'm sitting on the sofa and I start, I think I'm making that up. But when I'm working with somebody, it just flows, and I don't trust it. I don't question it at all. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. I think everyone kind of goes through that hurdle, whether you do it organically without going through a college or some sort of formal training, but everyone kind of goes through that process of you question, you go, oh, am I is this right, is this but when you finally get to that point where you accept that what you're doing is exactly what you're meant to be doing, it amplifies exponentially your connection, your pathway, and the information that's coming through, because there's a hurdle of yourself, of the human self, that gets in the way. And when you can set that hurdle aside, it opens up so much more. And that's but be able to do that in a guided, tutored type of scenario would be just amazing, would be absolutely amazing. So.
It's been great for me, I must admit. And I would recommend anybody work with somebody that has more experience, because that you really trust, because you have to have people with integrity, showing you the ropes, I think, and that's important, really.
Like that you said.
For
That
sure.
is so important.
Yeah,
Integrity has been another theme.
Yes.
Yeah. Moving forward. But we are so thankful to have you here with us. And thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us, and the beautiful information you've given to the people that watch this podcast. How can they find you?
Well, I want to thank you too, because it's been a lovely opportunity to meet you guys, and I'm really looking forward to your book coming out. So thank you for that. my website is www.davidmanningenergywork.com. So that's the best place to find me. I also have a YouTube channel, which is, I think it's just David Manning, actually. And there are lots of videos on there. But the website is probably the best place. And then you can sign up for my newsletter and get regular updates on what's coming up.
And my understanding is you're hosting a men's group where you meet with men.
No, I was, but that there was really not much interest in that. So it was like that seemed to just fold on its own. I hosted it because I had asked the question one day, where are all the men? And there wasn't an answer. And it was like, and then so I thought, well, I'll open this out. And there was a very small group of men came and I think probably I wasn't in the right place to be doing that either. It might be something that I offer again. But it was something I did for a while last year. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I would love that question to get answered someday.
Where are all the men?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And doing this work. Yeah. It's
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would highly recommend your teleconferences and individual.
Thank you so much.
I can attest to their benefit. They're just magnificent. And thank you again. Thank you so much for spending time with us, David.
Oh, it's been lovely. It really has been. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And until next time, thanks for being with us on Out on a Limb podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.